Hey guys, it's Shannon, and this video is going to be a little bit different than my usual content. Instead of talking the way I normally do, the way I like to do, and going over my points in a kind of conversational manner, or at least a congruent manner, in an effort to save your time and my own, I'm going to be going through this video as fast as possible, meaning that I'm simply going to be pointing out every time Jeffree Star lied or tried to manipulate the narrative in both his mom's basement interview as well as his Chris Hansen interview. His story changed multiple times throughout both podcasts. He manipulated multiple times throughout both podcasts, and I'm going to be covering all of it. Sorry if this video seems out of place or strange for me to make. I think having an archive of all the times this man's story changed within the span of 2 hours on 2 separate podcasts within the span of 2 days, and how he has full-on lied would be impactful for the internet, and I think that if I were to add my opinion onto the subject, it would then lead people to discounting his actions. Me making a joke about Jeffree or his lies in regards to this situation would lessen the impact I have going on here. So my goal is just to tell you the information, explain to you why it's manipulative, and put this out. This video is simply to show the lies that were stated in each and every video and showcase how, despite Jeffree saying that he's keeping it 100 and he hasn't lied about this situation at any point, that he absolutely has. So we're going to be starting with the Chris Hansen interview.
I was happy that people are finally getting a voice, because back in the day, I don't think that a lot of people took things like this serious. The subject matter that we're going to discuss today and everything that he's been accused of, people back in the day did not take it as serious as they do now, which is so horrible. So I'm glad that things are really coming to light. And at the end of the day, the goal is for him to be sitting in a prison cell. So I'm ready to dive in. You know what I mean?
Jeffree would later go on to describe himself calling Davi out in the tweets as him being dramatic, showing that he was one of the people in the situation who didn't take this issue seriously. So he's speaking about himself. In his direct messages with Petty Page as well as Truth Sleuth here on YouTube, he also stated that he didn't appreciate the fact that his name and his obvious previous association that was public with this man was coming back to light, saying that the tweets and the evidence showing their friendship were clearly photoshopped and manipulated.
So here's the thing. I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Blood on the Dance Floor and Jeffree Star, the musician, did a lot of tours separately. We only ever toured twice together. And
this is a lie. In every video that I have seen about the situation, only 2 tours have been talked about in regards to Jeffree Star and Davi Vanity. His first tour with them, which is in the video of the minor dancing inappropriately with Davi and Jeffree on stage, was taken and uploaded to Jeffree's channel back in 2010 with the first tour, which ended with Jeffree tweeting that he witnessed illegal actions taken by Davi. And then another tour around a year or so later where he tweeted his forgiveness of Davi's predatory behavior. In videos about the subject, no one has talked about more than those 2 tours, and this is a manipulation tactic or a lie to make it seem like people were overstating their friendship.
people may know this or may not know this about me. I don't drink. I know there's conspiracies that I secretly drink.
According to Jeffree Star, he used to lie online on MySpace, Twitter, YouTube, and every platform he had about him drinking. He would post videos and photos of him drinking cocktails and various other alcoholic beverages in order to make people think he was drinking and partying. He has stated since this time that he doesn't drink and was lying when he said that. Him stating that there are, quote, online conspiracies and trying to infer or allude that the screenshots and images of him drinking have no basis and are just conspiracies brought up by people who don't like him is extremely manipulative, because he put out that original narrative. He went on the internet and lied about drinking and now is upset that people don't know if he used to drink or not. He's upset because he put out tweets about being drunk, about getting hammered, and is now that people at that time believed him. It's manipulation at the finest. You cannot be mad that people are confused by your own actions when you admit to lying about your own actions.
Right. So here's the thing. In those days, and maybe in still today's times, in the rock and roll world and the music world, people brought kids, adults, anyone in the crowd on stage to dance and have a good time. Now, him grinding on people, when you look at that now in context and they're underage, yes, it's completely disgusting.
Jeffree is stating here that it was part of pop punk and rock and roll culture back in the War Pro days to dance sexually on stage with people, even if they were under the age of consent, and therefore we shouldn't criticize Davi or anyone for that matter for doing that. You could just bring a minor on stage, grab them by their neck, push them down, and dance with them in an inappropriate manner, because that was the rock and roll lifestyle. lifestyle. That's a disgusting thing to do. You shouldn't validate him doing this and try to play it off as no big deal, because in fact it is a huge deal. It doesn't matter if everyone in the pop punk world, or whatever word you're talking about, is doing it, or that it was just so punk rock to grab a minor by the neck and dance with her that way. It's still disgusting at the end of the day. It's not just disgusting because it comes out he's a predator. People called out Drake for doing the same thing to a 17-year-old at his concert, and it's not something that people should just let slide because it was very punk rock to do. If a minor is on stage and a grown man grabs them by the back of the neck and pushes them down in that way, that is inappropriate, point blank, period. Joining in and dancing with them is just as gross. However, remember that this is Jeffree's original statement about the situation, that it was no big deal and it was just the time and place it was in. That Davi on stage doing this was just a part of the culture, because that will become relevant in a minute or so.
But everyone at every single show, whether it was a Blood on the Dance Floor show, my show, any rock show, you grabbed people on stage, you danced, and you threw them back in the crowd, or they jumped back in, and that was that. So me being on stage and us singing the song that we did back in the day together, yes, we would always grab people up and do that. But for some reason, I'm responsible for his actions. Absolutely not.
No one stated that Jeffree was responsible for Davi's action. In fact, in my video on the subjects, I talked about how the video showed inappropriate behavior that Jeffree did see, validating his original claims that he made in tweets on the subject. If anything, that was me defending his initial point, that he had witnessed Davi behave inappropriately, and defending his original tweets. Jeffree manipulating the situation into people telling him that he is somehow worse than Davi, or responsible for him, is gross. All anyone has said is that this is evidence of Davi acting inappropriately that we actually have on film, and it's evidence that Jeffree saw the actions, which corresponds to his initial tweets.
And that's not what happens. You know what I mean? So I think the context of Jeffree being on stage and endorsing someone grinding against a minor is so wrong and not accurate at all.
This is less than a minute apart from when he said his original statement about how everyone in that scene allowed kids and teens below the age of consent to dance with them on stage in an inappropriate manner. This is a minute apart from when he just said this was normal and it's no big deal. So in less than a minute, he actually endorsed this behavior and said it wasn't a big deal and he took part of it and it was fine. And then he says he obviously doesn't endorse it and would never do that. Those are conflicting statements given less than a minute apart.
Do you remember things that Davi Vanity did that would horrify you today?
Oh, 100%. The things that I've seen were very offensive. And looking back, it was the way that he was such a master manipulator at making things seem not as crazy as they were. So yeah, I've witnessed him be very appropriate with people that were underage. Have I witnessed an actual crime? No.
I am putting this here because this is a non-statement that means basically nothing because it doesn't elaborate on what's being talked about here. He is saying yes, he witnessed inappropriate behavior that happened with minors, which is what he said he witnessed on Twitter, but doesn't go into more detail about what the inappropriate behavior was. What did he see that was inappropriate but not illegal? He will get into one story of what he saw, but it seems like he's holding back here.
There's a story about you coming on one of the tour buses and saying hi and bye and leaving and maybe looking the other way on some of this activity Davi was involved in with underage women.
I'm including this because Chris left out the context of who said this statement, which makes the statement a little bit more credible. Chris is deflecting now and saying there's a story instead of saying there's eyewitness testimony from someone who was there. The statement was given by Javon Monroe, who was a member of the band with Davi, and I personally feel is just as accountable as Jeffree is for working with Davi because like Jeffree, I believe Javon Monroe probably saw things and didn't report them to authority. Jay has said he witnessed Jeffree and Davi make up after Jeffree publicly posted that Davi was a child predator, which happened on their tour bus. Chris phrasing it as if there was just a random story out there that was floating in the ether and not another eyewitness testimony is outright gross and manipulative of him to do.
Characterize that.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that.
Sure.
So first of all, I was there. All these people speculating and making things up, they were not there.
No one is speculating this, Jeffree. Javon Monroe was on the bus. He was a witness. People are talking about it because it's what he said as a witness, so it's not speculation. Also, by your own admission, Javon Monroe was there in this instance. So you even admit that Javon, the person who was talking about the situation, is right and that this did happen, but you're trying to manipulate people into thinking about an action you just admitted to taking is wrong. You're trying to manipulate the narrative into saying, yes, that happened, but also people shouldn't talk about it. It makes no sense.
This is what's crazy, Chris, is that mothers would bring their daughters on the tour bus. So I never saw minors alone with them, never. But there would be moms who would bring their kids, whether they were underage or not, on his bus. And let's say I popped in to say hi to Jay, because me and Dobby were never best friends. I want to be very clear about that. Me and Jay were very close. And their violin player, Brandy, who was on tour with them for years and years. Jay and Brandy were my friends. So when I would go on the bus for a short amount of time and visit, whether we said hi, we smoked weed, we just talked and catched up, there was always moms with these people. And when there was girls on the bus, obviously I never knew their age, but no one ever looked really, really young.
So Jeffree talks about witnessing moms bring their daughters onto the bus to have potential three-ways with Dahvie Vanity, and talks about that in response to the question of if he went on the Blood on the Dance Floor tour bus and saw something inappropriate. He talks about seeing these mothers and their children, and about how Dahvie would talk about having sex with one or both parties, which is inappropriate behavior. He also states that these girls were young, but he obviously didn't know their ages, and didn't think the girls looked really, really young. So it wasn't that bad, because they weren't really young. They just looked young, and he didn't know that they were minors, so it's okay. In this statement, Jeffree is outright stating that he saw this happen with the women and their children coming on the bus and Dahvie having sex with them, and that was something that he was apparently okay with him doing, because, remember, he would later forgive this man and go back on tour with him and put his fans around him. So as shocking and disturbing as he now says this is, and as inappropriate as he's now saying it is, it's something he was apparently okay with enough to forgive this man and tour with him again. So any distancing he is doing right now from the statements, anything he is saying about not liking this man for that actions and that being vile, it wasn't enough for him to not put his fans in their sights. I just want you guys to keep that in mind. He states this many times throughout the interview, but in reality, if he was disgusted, as he says he was, he wouldn't have gone back on tour with him.
People have really horrific stories, so that 100% makes sense. It's like if he needed to use you for something, then he's only going to show you his best version, which he did to me a lot of the times. He wanted to use me. He wanted to get bigger from doing a song together, going on tour, trying to use my name. So I could definitely see that 100% happening.
I have no doubt that Dahvie Vanity did show a different side to the different people he was surrounded by. However, it's important to note that Jeffree is misconstruing the truth in this moment. He is stating that he had no idea about the dark side of Dahvie before he made his songs with him. But there is a Blood on the Dance Floor song from 6 years ago, from 2014, after apparently seeing threesomes with the mother and daughters. There's a song he wrote after seeing the vile action he just condemned that he recorded with him. He had already experienced a lot of what he thought was dark, twisted, and disgusting, meaning that Jeffree either knew about the dark side or knew about a dark side that he's now distancing himself away from before he made the music with Dahvie, or he lied again about what he witnessed.
And what was the talk about him with underage girls in those days? You talked about mothers bringing their daughters onto the bus, hanging out, inviting fans up on the stage. What do you think was really happening back then?
It's scary to think about because you just don't know.
This doesn't answer the question, and he goes on to talk about how he didn't actually bring his fans around Dahvie, despite them doing a joint tour in very small venues and clearly working very closely with him. This is a lot of deflection in the highest form. However, less than 20 minutes earlier, he was talking about how Dahvie gave him strange vibes and how he witnessed grown women take their daughters to see Dahvie and describe Dahvie talking about sex with both parties that were there. So obviously there is something going on that Jeffree Star did in fact witness, but he is here deflecting that comment in order to not implicate himself any further and not state that yes, he did bring fans around it despite him already apologizing for bringing his fans around it.
And I see a lot of people that think, oh, Jeffree, you brought your fans around him. And it's like, we have to stop that mentality. I did not bring my fans around him at all.
Yes, you did. Let's watch the video performance of Blood on the Dance Floor again with Jeffree and Dahvie dancing with a minor. This is an incredibly small venue with less than 1,000 people in attendance. This is a small space filled with young people who, if they aren't there for Dahvie, are there for Jeffree. You brought them around him, you performed with him, end of discussion. You can say you didn't know he was a predator and therefore didn't mean to put anyone in harm's way. That's a valid argument, and I would trust that and believe that, especially because you did that when you tweeted an apology to your fans for putting them in harm's way back when you denounced him. But what you aren't going to say is that you never did that inadvertently, because you did, especially if you think he really does deserve the firing squad.
And you see people for glimpses of the day and you talk for a little bit of time, but there was like maybe a year where I really befriended him. And then on that last tour, we literally didn't speak at all. And Davi were never best friends. I want to be very clear about that. There was like maybe a year where I really befriended him.
So which is it? Did you really try to befriend him for a year, and there was a year that you were close, or did you only see him in glimpses? Because you were saying both. He goes on to say that he saw Davi on the last tour very rarely because Davi was extremely jealous of him, the way apparently everyone else has been jealous of him. But he also stated here that he really went out of his way for a year to try and befriend him and get close to him, which beforehand, when he was talking about Javon Monroe, stated he was closer to Javon than anyone else, and he was never actually close to Davi, despite calling him his brother in tweets after their initial tour together. It's very odd because those two statements go directly against each other, and at some point we all have to agree that one of those statements is a lie. Either he's lying now to distance himself from a predator and had a momentary lapse in thought where he actually admitted that he was close friends with Davi for a year, or he was lying back then about being close friends with him and wasn't actually close to them when they were touring together and just said this now for, I don't know, lapse of judgment. He just didn't mean to say this.
They want us to talk about my tweets, Chris, and I think that it's very important to address it. Why did I tweet certain things about him being a piece of shit and seeing things, and why did I work with him again? I really think that we should talk about that.
First, if Jeffree thought this was important, he would have addressed it on his larger platform in order to protect his fans and hold himself accountable to the people who have a lot of trust and faith in him. He brought this up on all of his smaller platforms, and him doing this on a platform that is not his own, that doesn't even have 1/18 of the subscribers that he has, is extremely telling, especially since he hyped it up on his smallest platforms and not YouTube. Second of all, talking about the tweets that he sent out, along with his assistant's tweets, Daniel Lucas, in this manner isn't doing the tweets or his statements any justice. He is purposely downplaying what he said. So let me read you what was actually said between these two people, so the full context can be noted. These are Jeffree's tweets. I'm gonna speak the truth till I die. We saw Davi bring underage girls to his hotel room and do sexual things, 100% illegal. I no longer support Davi and how disgusting Davi is. Touching children and enjoying the attention is evil. Fuck off, sicko. Being on tour with that child fucker has made me see the truth. I regret ever doing a song with that pig. RIP because you'll never be me. If you support that piece of shit, unfollow me because you're supporting child molestation. Davi is the lowest worthless scum I've ever met. At that same time, after those tweets, his assistant, Daniel Lucas, tweeted this. On the real, at Blood on the Dance Floor Music would have underage girls in the car with him. He'd invite girls to come to the hotel so he can molest them. He's a disgusting pig. I feel bad for Javon Monroe. He doesn't deserve to be associated with a lowlife. He treats his friends like shit. And you're almost 26. You disgusting piece of shit, I hope you die. Your only thing you can say about me is that I'm an alcoholic and want to be Jeffree. Poor Sally Stitches doesn't deserve how he treats her. He wants to try and call me out on stage for being an alcoholic. You fuck 15-year-old. Unfortunately, those are not the only tweets because while I was making this video and researching, I found more tweets from Jeffree's assistant Daniel Lucas, who now goes by the name Worlka on Twitter, and those paint an even darker picture of what happened. Mind you, these screenshots were taken before they privated their Twitter and deleted a lot of it. I have evidence that these tweets were up over there because they decided my tweeting about this was apparently harassment. Those tweets say, at least I'm not a child fucker. Hope you really dine in hell soon. Down with at Blood on the Dance Floor. Go ahead and tell your girlfriend and Sally Stitches not to be friends with me. That's why they still love me. Fucking die Blood on the Dance Floor music. Oh, and on our 2D3F tour, I walked in on Davi getting a hand job from a 16-year-old. I'm not going to say that word because it's offensive. Truth right there. Once upon a time, there was a child molester named Davi, and he liked to lure little girls in his car and diddle their, not going to say that either. And finally, the last screenshot I was able to get before they privated their account was this. I just wanted to say sorry to Davi. I love you and wish you all the success in the world. See you soon, OXOX. So Jeffree Star's backup dancer and assistant, someone he names in the interviews, someone who was very close to Jeffree, is out here giving full-on statements about witnessing actual minors interact sexually with Davi. He's stating that he's seen actual 16-year-olds and actual assaults happen, but that's not all. After finding this out, I reached out to Daniel to see if he could remember anything about this situation situation. I also wanted to get them in touch with the authorities because had they really seen something, this would be important. I sent this message. Hi, I'm covering the Davi Vanity situation and I wanted your insight. I know that you said you witnessed some disgusting things and I wanted to see if you would be willing to talk about what you saw on tour, why you came forward, and with your permission, I would love to get you in contact with the FBI because they're currently working on a case against him. Daniel responded with this. To be honest, I don't remember much of that time in my life. I was an alcoholic and a mess. The only thing I ever saw was him kissing a girl, and I asked how old she was, and she said 18. And later I found out she wasn't. I think her name was Devin. But anything else I'll try to remember. But if you continue to harass me, I'll let you go. I'm fighting cancer and I don't have time for this. By the way, at the time they were sending these messages, I was just reposting their tweets about all of this and showing the various tweets showing that they knew. They thought that was harassment, and that's okay. Those are the tweets and statements that were put out publicly by Jeffree Star, his friend, and his assistant, and those tweets state that they both saw 100% illegal things happen on tour, and they go on to clarify what they witnessed, and the tweets that go further into detail about what was seen. But let's get back to Jeffree's response against them.
Back in the day, there was a lot of crazy rumors about Davi. There was never any criminal charges against him. He was never put in jail for, I know there was one instance, but he never served real jail time. There was no criminal case against him. So
this is untrue. There were charges against him back in 2009, and the police record was posted to Sticky Drama while they were on tour. The charge was that Davi forced himself on a minor. However, that minor didn't want to press charges because he had groomed her, and the cops didn't pursue legal action against Davi. But what's also inaccurate is the fact that he was also arrested while on that tour by brutalizing 2 minors against their will. So saying that it was just rumors and that nothing ever happened and no one ever knew anything and there was never any charges and the cops were never involved is actually false.
Yes, I tweeted out a lot of things. Did I ever see an actual sexual crime? Absolutely not.
So here he's saying, point blank period, that he lied here. He lied. He made a statement saying he witnessed things with his assistant, and now he is saying he didn't. And that, according to him, nobody did. Nobody around him did, despite the fact that multiple people stated they did. We now have his assistant's tweets that say otherwise, and say that even today, he recalls Davi making out with someone that is a minor. But apparently, Jeffree didn't know anything about that.
Did I see weird, inappropriate behavior? Yes. Did I call him a child molester? Yes, because at the time I really believed it. I thought that what people were saying and the weird things that were behind the scenes going on, that they were all true.
Well, that clears everything up completely. Off on all charges. Because calling someone a child predator with no proof, saying outright that you witnessed something that you didn't in order to hurt their careers and land them in prison, lying about seeing a crime, that is all fine, as long as you truly believe in your heart of hearts that that person did do a crime at some point in time. It would be fine for me to accuse Jeffree Star of being a criminal, state that they witnessed him committing a crime, as long as I state that I truly believe it at the end of the day. That's not how the law works.
And what did you believe at the time? And what was the reason for sending those tweets out, Jeffree?
Well, I felt that he was getting a platform that was bigger than I ever thought he would reach, right?
This to me is really gross because someone having a big platform or outgrowing you in terms of success shouldn't be, even in the back of your mind, a part of the answer to the reason why you decided to call someone out for being a sexual predator. That should never come up for why you decided to speak out against a sexual predator. You should call out someone for being a sexual predator because they are a sexual predator. End of discussion. This statement just gave credence to the people who state that Jeffree Star is a social climber and only attacked James Charles because he was growing and becoming the biggest makeup YouTuber on the platform. There is no reason that platform size should come up when being asked, why did you accuse someone of being a sexual predator, ever. After this point, he never actually states why he tweeted those statements when he didn't see anything. I'm going to play the rest of the statement now, and you guys can watch it and realize that he only ever said that he tweeted false allegations about this man because he was gaining a larger platform. Nothing else.
And what did you believe at the time? And what was the reason for sending those tweets out, Jeffree?
Well, I felt that he was getting a platform that was bigger than I ever thought he would reach, right? And I didn't want my audience to think that if they were true, which he, being the master manipulator that he was, proved to a lot of people at that time that he didn't do anything, that he really wasn't going to jail, because he never went back to jail after that one incident. So he really tricked us all into thinking, hey, I'm actually not that person, which was really scary. And one of the biggest regrets of being dumb enough to believe someone and to getting manipulated into thinking that he's, an okay person. And he really buried it as like, oh, this girl didn't get what she wanted from me, or I don't know what was the actual context.
But then why did you, after the tour, say you witnessed something? Why did that happen? If he manipulated you during the tour, back in 2010, why did you go on with him afterwards and then give false statements about witnessing a crime? If he was manipulating you during that time, that doesn't make sense. Because again, this is 2010.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that I don't have anything to report. If I actually saw and witnessed something, he would be rotting in jail this very moment.
So why did you and your assistant, Daniel Lucas, say you witnessed something? Why did you say that you saw something, and why did your assistant go further to say that he witnessed multiple accounts of assault publicly on Twitter while working with you and Davi closely? Why did you and your assistant report that you witnessed something that you didn't, and give details about what you did witness? Why did a victim say that you were there when they were assaulted? Why did your assistant today say they witnessed him making out with a minor? People don't understand you saying you have nothing to report, Jeffree, because it's so incongruent with what you said beforehand, and it's incongruent to the facts and tweets we have now. Make it make sense.
So for the record, no one has any contracts against me. No one has any secrets against me. Davi knows nothing about me. And yeah, it hurts that people would even think that.
I just wanted to stop here because the only people who were saying that there were contracts involved or blackmail involved or some reason that you couldn't come forward now were your own fans, Jeffree. They were trying to find an out for you that would have made it so you couldn't speak up against what was happening now. And they thought you being forced or blackmailed into silence was the only way that you would have stated that you saw a crime of this magnitude and later apologized to the criminal. That was your fans doing that. That was not any channel reporting this.
Let's go there. You send out these tweets, and yet in 2012, I believe, correct? You go back out on tour and essentially make public statements that
and a lot of people want
a good guy, and you're supporting him at this point. Well, how do you square that with people who question?
Yeah, well, a lot of people know I'm very dramatic, and I say things all the time in a very grandiose manner. So everyone wants me to address every single tweet. Let's go. Me calling Davi my brother, that's just me being dramatic. Davi was never my brother. We were never best friends. You can think that 100% not the case. But let's talk about me tweeting that he's a monster and then working with him again. So when I was doing my last tours, there was a big list, right? Who was going to play the opening bands before me? Who was going to play after me? And their name was on the list from their agent. And they were very big at the time. And the allegations, he made them all kind of go away. He manipulated the music scene. He was getting big tours. And I, at the time, was friends with Jay and Randy, his bandmates. So me and Davi hadn't spoken in a while. And he had reached out to me again. And he's like begging me to not believe what everyone had said. So I did my own research. And I reached out to Jay. Of course, Jay. Never seen anything, Jeffree. Davi's great.
So the issue here is, one, calling someone your brother, working on a song with them, and telling people who accuse Davi of sexual assault to get over the past and smile. That isn't being dramatic. That's not drama. Dramatic is crying when you spill ice cream. Calling someone a predator and then being friends with them isn't being dramatic. It's growth. What doesn't make sense with this response, though, is that your assistant, Daniel, even to this day, states he witnessed inappropriate behavior while touring. He stated that in a direct message to me a day ago. So someone close to you at that time already stated that there was at least one case where it had happened. There was another case that happened on the tour, and there was a third case that just happened before he was in the band. Not to mention you saying you witnessed moms bring their daughters on the tour bus to have three-ways and the dancing with minors on stage. Those are 5 separate things. So to me, in my opinion, there's already enough evidence to go off of that this person is disgusting. This person does disgusting things. Even if they're not illegal, there's something I wouldn't want to be around. There's enough boxes that were checked there. Not to mention that you went further than just touring with him, but made fun of a victim who now claims that you witnessed their assault. See these tweets that are still up.
Ever?
No, 100% not. I've never seen a sexual crime in person ever. And it's offensive that people would suggest that. But I get that my tweets are very misconstrued.
You said you saw it. Your assistant said you saw it. You tweeted that to your public platform 10 years ago. And those tweets have been cited in multiple news articles over the years and multiple websites that you had no problem with it. You cannot say that you saw something and then be angry and confused as to why people think you saw something. If you're offended, it's your fault, Jeffree, because you put out false statements. Also, no one is misconstruing what you said. We are reading your tweets verbatim. If there is another way to take your tweets or your assistant's tweets that state that you both saw something, other than just stating we saw this happen, then please inform the masses, because that is what you said. You inserted yourself into the mix and stated you witnessed a crime because you said we. That is what that word means.
And I don't know, there's this like myth that somehow I worked with Davi again for financial stability.
Again, this myth only exists because your fans are looking for a reason why you would befriend a known predator after you called them out. It's not something that channels like mine are spreading. It's not something that anyone is spreading other than people who are trying to defend you. It's something that people who like you are trying to use to make your own actions make sense because they're trying to excuse this behavior.
You know, and I know that by doing this interview, people on Twitter, other social media perhaps, will target you. They're going to pick this apart, as I said.
Oh, of course.
You guys can now ask me what it feels like to be low-key gaslit by Chris Hansen, because now I know. But also, picking apart someone's interview about a child predator that they knew and stated they were close to is not something that anyone should be ashamed of. Vigilantly watching this and seeing if there's lies or seeing if there's manipulation is not something to be ashamed of. If that were in fact the case, Chris would be out of a job, because that's what an interview is. Me going over this with this much detail is not an issue.
Whoa, we saw this video on YouTube from, 8, 9, 10 years ago where, there's Jeffree Star in a bathroom saying that he had something going on with this fellow the night before and he's sick to his stomach from drinking, and they're gonna make you look like a predator here.
If you are confused about what they are talking about here, they are discussing a video of Jeffree and his friend that was found on Twitter the day before this interview came out, where they were essentially bullying and harassing a man who was too drunk to stand or move, pulling his pants down when he was incapacitated, laughing at him as he pukes on himself, joking about how Jeffree just had sex with him and he's this drunk, and laughing that he probably has alcohol poisoning. This is the video that Jeffree himself put online, and it was shown in its full context the night before the interview because that's when it was found. Also, despite Jeffree stating that in the video he had sex with a man, the caption and description on this video states otherwise. Jeffree's response is telling.
Oh, of course. And they always have.
What do you say about that, though? Because, look, it's not a flattering video.
No, but every little clip that people piece together, they never either show the full one or read the caption to that video. So yes, in the video, do I suggest that me and that drunk person did something sexual? Yes. Well, no, absolutely not. In the caption, I literally say I would never let that disgusting person touch me. But when you clip the whole entire caption off and just show the little clip of him in the bathroom and down the stairs, of course it looks probably crazy, but that's a drunk person throwing up in a toilet. What happened after? What happened before? No one ever wants to ask any questions. They just want to copy and paste and write their own narrative.
This is a manipulation tactic through and through, because Jeffree is now holding everyone else accountable for not asking him what happened before and after this video when he put out this video. He put out the context and expects us to ask us for more context. It's like if there was a video that came out of someone bullying a child, and the entire video was that one kid being bullied and that kid crying. But the person who made the video gets upset because people are calling him a bully, because he just bullied that child. But they didn't see and they didn't know, because they didn't ask him and he didn't include in the video, that beforehand they paid that kid to cry and act bullied. And then after the video, the bullied kid and them high-fived and they got an ice cream cone. If you put out a video that has a certain context, you cannot get mad at people for not knowing the context. What happened here is that Jeffree put out a video that was very misleading, stating that he just had sex with a man he didn't know, verbally berating and verbally abusing this man while he pukes on himself, kicking him out of the apartment while yelling at him and making fun of him. Jeffree put that video out, got millions of views on it, and that was the full context. Getting upset with people who are now not taking your word that after the video you took care of him, you got him a ride home, you made sure he was safe, you didn't include that in the video, so you can't get mad at people for not knowing about that. The video you put out was you talking about having sex with a man who can't move, talking about how this man probably has alcohol poisoning and laughing at him, and then laughing about this man puking on himself. That is what you put out, not a video of you taking care of the man. If you wanted a video to come out of you taking care of the man that put you in a good light, you would have put that out. Getting mad at people because you put out a video that misled them is the same thing as getting offended that people think you saw a sex crime that you stated you saw when you didn't. Stop getting mad at other people who are confused by your actions when you lie to them, Jeffree.
But I get it. People want to create a certain story to copy and paste and fit it into Davi vanity, which is just so offensive. It's like, I'm not going to be the scapegoat and pretend to see things I didn't see.
Now, you aren't going to pretend that you didn't see things you didn't see now in 2020. But you were fine with pretending that you saw things that you apparently didn't see before when you tweeted out that you had seen things that you didn't see beforehand. Also, no one inserted you into the story. Nobody forced you into this. It's not a square peg going into a circular hole. You inserted yourself 10 years ago when you tweeted that you witnessed something and then later forgave him. You inserted yourself because you tweeted about this. Turning this around to say that everyone else calling you out on this and calling you out on what you said, they're the problem, and not the fact that you lied about witnessing a sexual assault. That's manipulation.
Don't use me to distract from the victims and the justice that they need and putting this person away.
No one is distracted from the victims here, and nobody is distracted from the Davi Vanity case. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, but you're saying this in order to make people think that anyone talking about this situation isn't paying attention to that situation. And I can prove this, because the channels that are focused on talking about this, talking about your actions with this, are also talking to the victims and helping them behind the scenes. Every single one of the channels that I have spoken to who has covered this story is also talking to victims. But if we are going to talk about victims, let's talk about how your comments caused one of the victims to have a breakdown because you didn't answer any of their questions and essentially called them a liar. But sure, Jeffree Star, internet billionaire, let's pretend like you care about the victims now and aren't just trying to shift the focus, despite the fact that you haven't spoken to anyone or offered them any support.
Yeah, so there's a misconception that I didn't want to ever speak out about these things.
Again, this is not a misconception because you talked to multiple drama channels and tried to get them to say that the screenshots that were shown were fake or photoshopped and tried to get them to report positive stories about that. We have count them two, drama channels that have released the DMs that you have sent them. You were aware of the story and what was being said about you, but you didn't get onto your platform of over 17 million subscribers in order to talk about what had actually happened in this situation and say your piece. Instead, you tried to get smaller channels to defend you, channels that you've sent inappropriate information to, and then when Keemstar reached out to you on my behalf, decided to go and do an interview with him on the subject. Then, when you got backlash for doing the interview with Keemstar about such a serious subject matter, you decided to quickly throw together an interview with Chris the day before so that you could say that you were taking this seriously, even though you were not. However, there is no misconception here. That is what happened. That is the time frame in which things happened. So you pretending that that's not the case is again manipulation.
I'm surprised that there are not more people calling his old manager, the tour manager that helped him master and manipulate the band and all these girls. I know that a few band members have come forward. I didn't know that until you told me recently. But all the band members, the merch people, they all lived with that person and they all have stories. And they all need to come forward and share them.
People have tried to contact them, Jeffree. In fact, I believe the same day, or at least the day the interview went up, Ripzilla uploaded a video where he talked to the merch girl. And I know at least 3 content creators who have tried to get in contact with other people for their input. And that's not even including the people who I've tried to contact behind the scenes who absolutely refuse to talk to me and have me blocked on all platforms. This is blatant deflecting and saying, hey, look at all these people who were there like I was, but don't look at me. Look at these other people who were involved. And even though I was with them, I wasn't involved, even though I've stated publicly on a very public platform that I'm famous on that I witnessed actual crime.
I don't know if he has NDAs on these people or what really happened behind the scenes, but they need to break them and they need to tell the truth.
I just wanted to comment here because earlier Jeffree said it was offensive to say that he signed NDAs about this and that was rude. However, here he is now saying about other people. He's not keeping the same energy for himself as he does with other people, and now he's adapted those arguments that people use to defend him, which makes him a hypocrite. Beforehand it was rude, but now it's okay because it's to someone else.
But there's so many things that people are trying to connect that have nothing to do with Davi Vanity being prosecuted. So I see that there's a lot of questions that people want you to ask you about things that have nothing to do with what's actually important.
Yes, that is true, because it goes to your credibility and your habit of calling people sexual predators and then turning around and pretending you didn't do that. It goes to your statements inserting yourself into these situations when people are in danger and then you turning your back on that. These are all things that will eventually be brought up if this case goes to court, especially with all the reporting around the situation that states that Jeffree was a whistleblower about Davi being a predator. Check the Huffington Post article that was written about this that features his tweets. You said you witnessed something publicly and then lied about it, which is important to the case, Jeffree, as much as you pretend it isn't. And people finding out that you were also friends with more than one predator is also very important. So while it doesn't go to the credibility of the case, it goes to your credibility as a witness and it goes to your credibility in terms of the case.
I'm going to say it for real. I may have said it 10 years ago. I'm going to say it right now. Davi Vanity, we all know, is a piece of shit.
I may have said it 10 years ago, but I'm going to say it right now for real. I just wanted to emphasize how he has accused someone of a literal crime 10 years ago, and his assistant talked about witnessing it and walking in on multiple assaults. That wasn't for real. That wasn't for real for them. That was just joking. That was a lie, it was a joke, it was just a goof, it was just Jeffree being dramatic. And it was later something that Jeffree himself got over. But now he's stating it, and he really means it this time. That's very gross and odd to me.
You have enormous sway in the makeup world, obviously, celebrity influencing. Potentially millions of people will watch this show over the next few weeks and live right now. I'd like to think because Chris Hansen, but the reality is that Jeffree Star brings enormous celebrity cachet.
This is an ego-driven statement that is meant to boost the vanity of both Chris and Jeffree. In an interview about a child predator that you had a previous friendship with, someone's social media following and worth shouldn't be brought up because it truly doesn't matter. This is a gross statement. Also, it's slightly funny that their interview doesn't have a million views on it like Chris obviously very desperately wanted.
Someone that's actually respected, okay? No offense or shade to what we call them drama channels, Chris, in the YouTube world, or people that report news. A lot of people do not have great intentions. A lot of people are making money off of this story, and I think that's wrong.
That's a valid opinion to have. Had it not been said while $100 of super chats were being sent to Chris Hansen's streams that were dedicated directly to the victims and were addressed to them that aren't going to them. However, it should be noted, and I can only speak for myself truly, that my videos covering the Davi Vanni situation and Jeffree Star's involvement have mostly been demonetized. I do not censor myself. I don't censor the word predator or abuser in my videos, so they automatically get flagged. I'm not making bank, so the money that Mr. Star thinks any of us are making on it, it simply is not there. Not to mention, he had no issue with drama channels that he was sending private information, identifying information about the James Charles situation privately, like Petty Page has stated, and making monetized video about that person being a predator and his involvement with that. So this opinion is pretty hypocritical and also manipulative because he doesn't actually have an issue with people making money talking about serious subject matters. He just has an issue when people talk about him, as shown.
I mean, a lot of the times I see people create I don't want to say the word foundation is correct, but even like GoFundMes for survivors.
Now, Chris and Jeffree could have seen this as an opportunity to create something for their survivors, but seeing as they didn't, and Jeffree has been giving away money on his Twitter daily, which is amazing and should not be shit on, says a lot. Again, neither of them did this, which is gross. Because why bring up an action that you can take? Why bring up donating your money to survivors so they can go to therapy and talk about taking it and then simply not do it? Especially if you're a millionaire who has so much money to give. In fact, one of the super chats at the time said that Jeffree should pay for the survivor's legal fee, and you guessed it, it was ignored.
The music industry is very evil. Now that people have seen like the Harvey Weinsteins, that was going on with producers, with other musicians, and the whole music scene was so toxic. It was definitely a very huge part. And it wasn't just Davi, you know what I mean? There was other people that I've known in the past.
So in my video last week, I talked about multiple different predators that Jeffree was friends with. And in a direct message to Truth Sleuth on YouTube, Jeffree Star stated he wasn't going to be scapegoated for their actions, and it just so happened that he was friends with over 12 predators at this point. However, this statement makes it seem like Jeffree does in fact know more, because at first he is stating that the scene was fine and they were just rumors, which is why nobody went to jail and no one was put away for the crimes they committed. But here he is stating that it was so dark, evil, and toxic, and that he had to leave because it was just so gross, it was just so terrible, and the people were horrible, and all this stuff was going on behind the scenes and he just couldn't talk about it. So which is it? Was it super gross and toxic and you witnessed disturbing acts? Or was it super punk rock and it was all rumors and you loved it?
I know I've had a lot of controversies. I've said a lot of dumb shit in my past. And I will always live with those things. I will always be sorry for those things.
Which is why you tried to bury this information and spin it in a way that was positive, and why to this day you refuse to acknowledge this on your most successful platform or donate to the victims. People who are sorry for what they've done will say the words "I'm sorry" before trying to attempt to silence people talking about their actions. The rest of the interview is about how amazing Jeffree is and how he is so honest and authentic. I kid you not, there is a portion where Jeffree and Chris talk about how honest he is and how real he is, and I just had to screenshot the chat for that part because it really says it all. The rest is talking about his donations, how he wants Davi to be killed by firing squad, and how anyone criticizing him is just bored. So we are going to move on from here and go to his second interview that was done on Keemstar's podcast, Mom's Basement, available for free on Spotify. Like I had mentioned earlier, this was going to be the only interview that Jeffree was going to do about this situation. However, after he got backlash from his fans and the survivors, he quickly opted to schedule a live Chris Hansen interview to happen before this. Also, oddly enough, this interview came to be because Keemstar had watched my video and wanted to try to get an explanation or quote from me as to why he took back his accusations against Davi and went back on tour with him. Yes, Keemstar follows me. Yes, he DM'd me asking for information to use in this interview. And yes, I feel like I live in the Twilight Zone at this point because 2020 isn't real. Now, the day before this interview, Edwin's Generation to Mimi, Keemstar, and I had been live streaming, and Keemstar asked us not to expect too much from this interview. He stated he wasn't going to be trying to get a hard-hitting expose out, and he just wanted to talk to Jeffree about his empire and lightly touch on some things that had happened. So my personal expectations for this were low. I didn't expect anything hard. I didn't expect a full deep dive. I knew what I was getting. I fully didn't expect what we got though, because Colossal is Crazy was amazing. Keemstar actually asked some hard-hitting questions, and this interview was generally better than Chris Hansen's. Also, sorry Banks, you did a terrible job and randomly talked about incest and how it's okay if everyone's legal, which was weird. Maybe not do that. So let's get into it.
And I still have never drank, which is a very big conspiracy on the internet because I used to pretend to drink, take pictures, hold bottles, tweet crazy things about being drunk, and I've never drank before.
You've never drank?
Again, much akin to before, Jeffree likes to almost gaslight people into thinking that they are ridiculous for thinking that he used to drink when he admits in the same sentence that he used to lie about drinking. And then he goes further to say this.
I mean, why would I lie about not drinking? I rarely say this. That's the gayest thing I've ever heard.
I don't, Jeffree. Why did you? I've never lied about drinking. Why would you lie about drinking? It's a situation where Jeffree is getting mad at people for believing him when he was lying and being confused because his actions later don't add up. It's like if I said I'm married and have a husband and then a year later stated that I have never been married, never had a husband, and I'm pissed off that you would think that. And then instead of saying, yes, it's something I lied about, sorry for the confusion, I understand where that came from, I was insecure and just wanted to fit in, I say something along the lines as, you guys have this crazy conspiracy because I used to pretend to do something that I was lying about, but why would I even lie about it? I don't understand how you are upset at the world because you lied. It's not anyone else's fault but your own that you put out a lot of lies.
But right now there is all this drama surrounding you and blood on the dance floor, and that's how I ended up like getting on the phone with you because I was trying to help out a smaller drama channel to ask them a question.
Yes.
And then we just decided to do this, which we were planning to do anyways. We were going to invite you on the show, so it all kind of worked out. But
yeah, it's perfect timing. But a lot of these channels are making all these videos, and they've never reached out and asked any questions.
So first off, that's me. I'm the smaller channel. And just so everyone is clear, I reached out to Jeffree also publicly, which he saw because he mentions my tweets in various DMs with other drama channels and my videos as well. And other channels, other than me, reached out to him as well. Robzilla, who has been covering this and interviewing survivors, and at least 5 other channels that I personally know of have DM'd Jeffree about this. However, those DMs went completely unanswered. Now, that to me is super understandable, seeing as he is very famous with a lot of people working for him and a lot of things to do. I am not under the impression that if I DM'd him as a small channel, I would hear back immediately, especially when I have been so critical of him. So I don't really expect him to see a DM from a small channel or see DMs from anyone talking about this, or at least be aware of this situation until after the video drops and after they get a certain amount of views and are brought to his attention. However, the narrative that no one has reached out at this point when people have shown they have doesn't work. Again, at this point when he's saying this to Keemstar, 5 people had proven they had reached out to him and they were left on red. And I had tweeted multiple times to Jeffree publicly that if he wanted to answer some questions one-on-one with me, I would be down to do it, and I heard nothing back. So this statement is false. Keem was the first one to get a response, but he was not the first one to reach out. So that you're stating they're spreading a narrative and nobody wants the real information from me is a lie.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week of me waking up and people trying to villainize me for something an old friend did.
That's deflection. No one is trying to hold you accountable for the things that Davi did. In fact, a lot of us are working hard to find lost videos that show Davi behaving inappropriately so they can be turned in as evidence. I know I personally have spent money hiring people to look these up. The people who are critical of you are critical because one survivor stated that you witnessed them being assaulted when they were 11, and you yourself stated you witnessed multiple crimes and called it out, and then later forgave the child predator. That is why people are mad at you. That is what people are holding you accountable for. Not because we think that you somehow were just as bad as Davi despite not doing anything. We are mad because you lied about the case, or worst case scenario, you didn't lie, and now it hurts the credibility, and now you're trying to paint a narrative like what you did in terms of lying wasn't that big of a deal when it is. That's why people are mad. No one's mad because we think you're responsible for Davi. No one's mad because we think you did something with Davi that's evil. We're mad because of the actions that you state that you have taken.
And people are connecting that, hey, you called this person out and then you worked with a pedophile again. And I'm like, oh, we're not doing this. So that's what's people have been trying to start that rumor.
You and your assistant at the time said you witnessed literal crimes and then a year later told people to get over it and apologize. You stated on Twitter you saw something and called Davi a child fucker. I am not going to reread the tweets that I already read, but you saw them, you know what they are. You aren't going to flip the narrative as if people saying point blank what you did and using your words against you is crazy somehow, because this tone is trying to make it seem like what he just described is so crazy and out of this world because that's what happened.
But the thing is I did not see a crime ever committed in person. And there's a lot of people that in their head want to believe that I did. And I, of course, never did because that's horrifying. And I would of course, report it.
Again, this is gaslighting and manipulation of the situation. Jeffree tweeted that he saw something that were, quote, 100% illegal, but is now confused as to why people think he saw something 100% illegal. It's like him saying he doesn't drink and it's a conspiracy that he used to when he self-admits to lying about drinking. It's also like he will later go on to say that he has evidence against James Charles, but he doesn't want to out the victim, but he hasn't turned that over to the police.
And it's so absurd to copy and paste all these old videos of Jeffree and Davi grab people from the crowd and dance with them on stage. Is that not every rock show you've ever been to as a kid?
Again, he's bringing up the video of Davi dancing with a minor where the minor is grabbed by the neck and pushed down to dance with Davi. What they are talking about is not the same thing as grabbing a fan from the crowd who's obviously underage, holding them by the back of their neck and dancing with them. It's very, very, very different. Dancing with someone on stage is not inappropriate. Dancing with a minor in the way Davi did it is. But again, this is Jeffree saying how Davi danced with that girl was totally okay and Jeffree Star approved. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
So they're trying to vilify me and somehow make me complicit to this piece of shit. And it's shocking that they're more so focusing on me and our friendship than putting this person in jail.
No, you made yourself, Jeffree, complicit when you said you witnessed a crime and then worked with him again, made fun of the victim, and then told people who were talking about the situation to get over it. Also, from what I've seen, no one is more focused on vilifying you than holding him accountable. No one. I am personally in talks with multiple people who he's currently preying on and trying to get them to understand what's going on. I am trying to get them out of that situation. I have also been talking to multiple people behind the scenes, and I've also put my own money on the line to hire people to find specific videos that Davi had up that have been deleted to send to the FBI because they show bad behavior. And that's just what I'm doing. There are plenty of other channels like Pastel Bell, Repzilla, and Tamimi who are doing more for survivors. The idea that we're all ganging up on you and none of us actually care about the victim or care about the situation is a gross narrative to spin, especially because you have no proof of that. And all the proof that we've shown goes against you.
Banks, a lot of the victims are coming forward. There's 21, so I call them survivors.
Wow.
The 21 survivors.
Jeffree parroted what Chris Hansen said the day before in order to seem more empathetic. I will play both back to back now because before Chris stated he likes to call them survivors, Jeffree would call them victims.
But I feel some responsibility towards the survivors, and I don't like using the word victim because they are survivors.
Banks, a lot of the victims are coming forward. There's 21, so I call them survivors.
Wow.
The 21 survivors. No, I'm talking about like when you're dancing on stage. Yeah, you grind on people, you slap their ass. It was all part of the show. But when you tell someone that doesn't understand the rock world or that world, they take even what I'm saying right now out of context.
Yeah. Again, Jeffree here is manipulating the narrative to be people are lying about what I'm saying now, and they are taking what I'm saying out of context, which isn't true. I've already read the tweet because once again, day before, he stated he knew Davi was having threesomes with the mothers and he was told about it. He wasn't just talking about grinding at shows. He is lying. And no one who's talking about this has taken his words out of context.
Okay, so it's an old tweet from you, Jeffree, that says, I'm going to speak the truth until I die. We saw Davi bring underage girls to his hotel room and do sexual things 100%. So that's the thing where they're like,
Yes,
he saw. Yeah.
Was that you assuming that happened?
No, that's people in the music scene telling me and me speaking for them.
Okay.
Did I see with my own eyes? No. Were we on tour a few times and there was always people around? Yeah, and I mentioned this yesterday and people were kind of shook. Mothers would bring their daughters to these shows.
I mean, that's such a misleading tweet, isn't it? That's so misleading.
Which part?
No? We saw Davi bring underage girls to his hotel rooms and do things 100% illegal. Of course, people are going to interpret that as you seeing that with your own eyes.
Oh, of course.
I love Colossal is Crazy right here because Clown really just said, shut the fuck up with your manipulation. How are you actually confused that people think you saw that? Colossal later went on Twitter to say he didn't know any of the details of the situation or who Jeffree actually is and was giving his honest reaction. So the fact that he didn't know about the situation and was just going off what Jeffree had told him previously, he was primed and ready to believe that everyone was just using his names for clicks and views, and he was already the prime target to be manipulated by Jeffree. And the moment Keem actually read out the context, gave proof, he switched and he called it out. He got Jeffree, who has been manipulating the narrative to this point to say it's so crazy that people want to attach me to this, to admit that the tweets that he sent out were misleading and that the people who are talking about these tweets aren't crazy and making up a conspiracy in order to get him. We have to stand.
Because when I said we, there was people, my old dancer and assistant, Daniel, he tweeted out a bunch of stuff and other...
Again, this was the first time that Jeffree acknowledged Daniel in this, and these are the tweets that Daniel also had up of him walking in on multiple people and referencing a literal child who was taken advantage with and then bullied online by Jeffree and Davi. This was the first time in the interviews that he actually acknowledged it, which adds credibility to the statements that we have on screen now.
Other people were doing that, and it was very like that rock star life, and that there's no excuses for it. It's still disgusting and wrong, but if you were not there, but yeah.
Basically what Jeffree just said is there are no excuses for it, but here's an excuse. Now, fun fact, I was there. I went to Warped Tour. I remember it well. So I understand the quote lifestyle, seeing as I was there moshing and messing around. However, you can't say that there are no excuses for it and then try to make an excuse for it. It cancels out his sentiment.
And I never saw underage girls with him alone. There is a survivor that has went on record saying, hey, Jeffree and his friends were present during me being there in these times. And 10 years ago, I don't remember that person. And I'm not going to pretend to follow a narrative of what people want me to say that I saw.
But do you later remember making fun of the person who was 11 when they were assaulted? I am so happy that you aren't going to lie to fit a narrative, even though you have already established that you lied in order to seem cool about drinking, and you lied about witnessing crimes publicly on Twitter, not once but twice. But it's great that you won't lie about this. That's character growth.
One person has said that they saw me in an environment where they were alone with him and kissing, and I'm like, you guys, absolutely not.
I just wanted to stop here and note that Jeffree just went from I don't remember, I didn't know, it was ages ago, I don't recall seeing this person, to saying absolutely not, no, that is a lie. No. Which is him stating that the person who witnessed him being there, who was assaulted in front of him, is lying. He then goes on in detail about how it's their parents' fault for letting them be in that environment, and then talks with a lot of knowledge about this person and what this person has gone through, which to me says yes, they do remember this person, or they've done a lot of digging into this person's life. But here he went in the span of less than a minute to I don't recall, I don't think that happened, to that never happened, no, they're lying. So yes, he is blatantly calling a victim a liar.
Now people need to focus on prosecuting this man and stop worrying about my old friendship with someone from 10 years ago.
The only reason it's being focused on is 1, because you keep lying about it, and 2, you stated you witnessed a crime and then worked with him again. If this was just a case of someone you used to know casually being exposed for all these crimes that you couldn't have been privy to, that would be one thing. If you just knew someone and this was a crime that they had committed and you were like, I barely knew them, that was it, that would be one thing. The issue is, once again, you called him out for these crimes, stated you witnessed it, and then stated he didn't do it and he's Peachy King, and then put more of your fans in harm's way by touring with him and collaborating with him and giving him some of your fans. Also, it's trying to reframe the narrative and say anyone who's talking about this isn't focused on Davi, which again, I've already stated isn't true. You're trying to reframe the context, so if anyone talks about you in this situation, it's because they're big bad. That's not acceptable.
You can also make the argument that they're using your name to bring more light to this pedophile,
Yes.
as you say. So by using your name, it can be constituted as a good thing, because otherwise this story would just not get covered and wouldn't be picked up by certain people.
Look, I fully agree with you, but their whole context is Jeffree Star, and that's it.
This is so utterly false. It really requires someone to not know the full situation in order to move forward with this line of thinking. In videos that are talking about Jeffree, they mainly, if not only, focus on the fact that he accused Davi back in 2010 and then later apologized in 2011 and took back his claims. They praise him for calling it out, and then they're confused as why he took it back. In the first video I made on this situation, I talked about Jeffree exposing him, and then I was confused as to why he took that back. A lot of channels felt the same way. Now, as time goes on, more channels are getting invested into this situation because he has since sent drama channels DMs blatantly lying and misrepresenting what is actually happening, and has gone on 2 interviews and said different things, hoping no one would notice. That's why your name is being brought up, Jeffree. Had it stayed there and had you said, I was manipulated by him and that's it, people would have dropped it. But what you're doing now is giving more details, and the details don't mesh together. The details don't go with what we can prove has happened. And more is coming out about it that is questioning your credibility.
Yesterday, Banks, I did an interview with Chris Hansen. This guy's
Which
been
is
doing
crazy.
this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, you know what? Let me answer some questions that people have. And, people that
Is
already...
that live? Is that on the internet right
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
Wow.
So the fact that if you already don't like me, you didn't like what I had to say.
False. Again, this is manipulation. Because right now what you are stating, Jeffree, is that there was nothing wrong with that interview, you didn't contradict yourself ever, and all the critiques that are made about that interview are invalidated because you said so. Because they just wanted to hate you. It's a reframing of the narrative, despite the fact that I have now read the transcripts 4 times, I've watched the interviews, both of them, 3 times over to make sure I have all the information, and there are things to legitimately criticize you for because in the span of minutes, you contradict yourself and you go over certain parts that don't make sense. You are reframing this in order to manipulate the audience into thinking the interview I did was perfect, there was flawless, there was no contradictions, everything was fine. The only people who don't like it are people who don't like me.
Jeffree Star back in the day used to tweet and lie about a bunch of shit. Not just about Jack Daniels. I also tweeted about allegedly sending band guys nudes to him to then use for revenge, which I never did, but I did lie about it.
Then why are there photos that are easily Googleable with the anyone's up watermark on them that feature you with another man that are obviously revenge porn, Jeffree? Why is that something that exists if you never did it? Again, he is apparently mad at people for believing something he lied about. He lied about drinking, he lied about witnessing a crime, and now he lied about sending revenge porn. And if you think he did all those things because he told you he did all those things, you are now in the wrong. Even if he told you himself that he was going to be doing those, and even if there is evidence that he did do it that you can Google, you are the one in the wrong. I'm not going to upload the photo of him with another person from isanyoneUp.com. I don't know if it's revenge porn or not, but it shows he did upload there, and it's gross.
100%. I used to say things all the time like that. So he made a tab on his website of Jeffree Star and what straight men I have hooked up with, and he put up rappers that people had insinuated. Half were true. Half were lie. All the band guys at Warped Tour that I was hooking up with. And, there was no other really person like me back then. And I was the only guy in makeup, and it was just a different time. So I was very offensive, and I told him a few names, and some of them were true, some of them were not. So now people are trying to say that I supported revenge porn and supplied this man with photos.
So, just so I'm clear, Jeffree told a man who ran a revenge porn website about men who were likely in the closet that he had hooked up with and maliciously outed them on that site. He also outed men who weren't actually gay in order to embarrass them. But it wasn't that bad because he's playful about it and he thinks that someone threatening him to not out them is a cute thing to do, and it's funny. Outing someone can be exceptionally traumatic, and it's not something that anyone should joke about, especially in that day and age where people were extremely homophobic. He then goes on to state that Hunter's book is filled with lies, and frankly, I believe that. I have tried to get into contact with other people who are featured in the books and their descriptions and get their comments on the statement, and even people who are presented well in that book, they don't like the book, they think it's a lie, and they say don't trust a word coming out of his mouth, and so that's what I believe as well.
But can I just be honest, the undertone of these drama channels and of people buzzing is that I approved or didn't care that this person was doing something illegal. And just for the record, it's so disgusting to insinuate that.
Again, manipulation. We aren't insinuating that, Jeffree. You are. you insinuated that when you publicly told the victims to get over it. So you saying that it's disgusting that we insinuated that means that your own actions are disgusting. So take your critiques up with yourself.
Crazy.
Yes. So
I hopped in a little
so
bit.
people do want to put together the parallels of this 10-year situation and me saying this stuff about James. It's a very complicated question. And why?
I know, but like it's the same scenario though, because like if James is actually a danger, right? Then this is the opportunity, like the Darby thing, where you can say something. You know what I mean? Or is like maybe you shouldn't have put that tweet out. Like which one is it? Like I'm sorry, Jeffree, but I have to ask.
No, I'm 100% comfortable with that. It's going to upset a lot of people, but the truth is that someone, and right now I legally can't say who, told us a few things, and we trusted that person's opinion, and then another person said some things that was friends with that man, and it really convinced us that he was a predator.
Is this another case of what happened before with the other guy?
Now, something that came out during the Edwin's Generation live stream is that Jeffree did out the victim. Jeffree has outed the victim numerous times to various other channels. Petty Page talks about how she was sent information about it and how she doesn't want to comment on it because it isn't her place to do so. So Jeffree stated he isn't going to out this person is a downright lie because he's already tried to by giving it to drama channels that he's hoped would report on it. He's already tried to by sending the information outward to other people who should not be receiving the information anyway. Page full-on stated she doesn't think she should have been sent that information, and it's gross that he did that. However, him saying that this situation is different is in fact a lie, because he is stating that, like before, he has no actual evidence against James. He has no evidence that has been made public, and nothing that he is willing to give to the police or the authorities. But despite that, he wanted to call James out regardless and state he was a sexual predator. So he did. Also, much like with Davi before, it seemed to happen when James was getting a bigger platform than Jeffree. Reminder, Jeffree originally said this in response as to why he called Davi a predator.
And what did you believe at the time? And what was the reason for sending those tweets out, Jeffree?
Well, I felt that he was getting a platform that was bigger than I ever thought he would reach, right?
Is this another case of what happened before with the other guy?
No, this is some...
Is there a possibility of that? Because, I mean, they were telling you about this guy, which turned out to be true now. Is this possible with James?
From what I remember with all the drama, you didn't actually ever say flat out like you saw it. Like, it was always in the proper context of like, listen, like I'm speaking about this from kind of the view of like the circle of people that we've been discussing this with, kind of sort of thing. Like, I don't think it's similar in the sense that you flat out said, I saw some shit. You know what I mean?
Similar enough. I'm sorry. It's similar enough.
I'm lost. I'm sorry.
Clown is now officially my god. We stan him.
And I don't know if they're true or not.
But this is exactly the same thing that happened before, right?
It's actually not.
What?
So if you want, we can pause and I can go in another room and play Banks what I have on my phone, and he can determine if he would have sent the same tweet.
This is gross, and it's a manipulation tactic to the people who are listening. One, it speaks volumes that Jeffree is okay with working and outing a person privately who made these claims against James, who wants to remain private to someone else. He is now outing this person to a separate person who was not sent this information because Jeffree just wants to prove his point. That's a huge overstepping of boundaries. If someone says, please keep this between us, don't make this public, you don't send that to other people, you don't show that to anyone else. That is private information. But he has now sent it to multiple drama channels as well as Banks apparently. He is also doing it to make his audience think, wow, if he is willing to go into the other room and out the victim to this public person, what's on his phone must be such hard-hitting evidence that he doesn't want to share with the police that we should trust him. Which, fun fact, it's not. Because if it was hard-hitting evidence, if it was a public statement that was going to be taken seriously, it would have been sent to the cops and not to fucking Jeffree Star. It would have been sent to some authority figure who could actually prosecute this and not a man who sells lipstick. So what he has is either one, not that serious, or two, an accusation that is not substantiated by the law. Him stating that he has evidence of this is insane, because the main point that I and so many others have been critical towards him about is him apparently not talking to the police about the things that he saw and he witnessed, and him withholding his testimony and withholding evidence, and now he's doing it again. He's stating he has, quote, evidence of video of someone accusing James of a crime, and he's not going to send that to the cops. He's not going to talk about it, but he is going to allude to it publicly online and try to ruin the reputation of this other person.
To the
It's
subject
so
that we've been
because everyone wants to make me you ruined James Charles' career. No, Tati did and uploaded a 40-minute video about him, and she should have never uploaded that.
True, but you can't say that you tweeting and posting about this nonstop, saying that James was not allowed in your house, and supporting this and sending the drama channel's information behind the scenes didn't contribute, because it absolutely did. You gave people too much information that was not made public and that Tati didn't make public, but now you're going to scapegoat her.
And for some reason, James thinks that me and Shane tried to ruin his life and orchestrated the whole thing. Like we fucking care.
Obviously, you do care, Jeffree, seeing as later you will talk about how someone you are no longer friends with is in the Red and Social Blade, despite the fact that you state you don't care about them anymore and you don't check up on them. It's very clear that you do care, probably because James himself has surpassed you in subscribers after you tried to ruin his career and attack his younger brother.
You know Shane longer than me, Keem. You think we care to drag or ruin someone? For what? We're our own superstars. We're our own lane. We're doing our own thing together, and we've made so much magic.
You literally attacked a 10-year-old last month, and in the same podcast shaded Kat Von D for no reason when she hasn't been relevant in 2,000 years. You do care to drag and ruin someone. You do it all the time.
People just want to keep going. They want to create a feud against me and James. There's no feud. I know everyone wants to create one over and over.
You literally just got finished saying that there is evidence on your phone that shows James is a predator. You just said that. So now you are saying that James isn't a predator, and just like Davi, you think people should get over the past and smile and get over the negativity. I just want to clarify right now that I obviously do not think that James Charles is a predator. I don't think James is anything like Jeffree is trying to state that he is. I just wanted to point out how counterproductive Jeffree's statements are, especially in the argument about Davi, because he's doing the same thing here. He's telling people, oh, they're all negative, and anyone bringing this up is negative, but I do have evidence and he is terrible, but I'm over it. It doesn't make sense.
Like, his fans really try to create always an animosity. Like, I've been doing this for so long.
This is an ironic statement because your fans are so known to be terrible that people actually don't talk about you because they don't want to deal with your fans. You also just got finished talking about how you declared him a sexual predator, but you're going to say he's filled with animosity? That's weird.
Valid was this testimony from the victim on a scale of 1 to 10?
What do you...
In your opinion? It's a loaded question. I know.
Oh, well, it isn't a testimony. It's someone telling you certain things, and you don't have proof that what they're saying is true.
So after stating that he has evidence in his possession on his phone that would make Banks tweet that James is in fact a predator and make Banks shit his pants, he has changed it to say that it's just some people telling him some things that may or may not be true, which is nothing. It's not evidence, it's not testimony, it's not anything. It's just a person telling someone what could be a lie, and him deciding that that was evidence enough and that was reason enough to publicly state that James was a sexual deviant and hope that no one would call him out or ask for proof of it.
That James has dealt with enough mental abuse, and I don't know what the future holds.
In this conversation with Keemstar, Clown, and Banks, Jeffree has stated that he thinks predators should be killed, that he has evidence on his phone to show that James is a sexual predator, that he has no bad blood with James despite thinking he's a predator, that James is a narcissist who wants to be like him, and last but not least, the man who apparently he's comfortable saying has victims, has dealt with enough mental abuse. Those statements go directly against each other. If you think he's a predator, the same way you think Davi's a predator, why aren't those clicking for you? Those statements don't make sense.
Look, if James Charles is ever listening, call me or sit down with me, and I will show you what was shown to me.
So again, you're confident enough to say that James Charles is a predator and a danger to society and terrible and evil, but you don't want any more bad blood with him. Make it make sense. After that, the podcast winds down and they give their goodbyes, and because I am now 23 pages of notes and 10,500 words deep into this, I will end this as well. I've also been recording for an hour and 30 minutes, so let's see what this turns out to be. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. This took an entire day to write, not meant to record and edit. I hope you guys have a dope day, and I will see you in my next video. Later.